Last month I did a multi-author event in Jackson, Michigan, with several authors from my contacts with my podcast and touring around events around Michigan. And we held what was called a true crime symposium at the old Jackson prison work building, which was a wagon factory. And the building was called Art 634. This is the second year we've done this event. It was very successful. But after the program, one of the authors, who's a friend of mine, Judy Gail Krasnow, I asked her if she would give us a tour of the old Jackson prison, because she lives there now in an apartment. It's a housing complex now, but you have to go in with somebody who lives there because it's a secure building. And anyway, so she arranged to give us a tour afterwards. And so this video, we're going to walk through the old Jackson prison and look at it as it is today. It's been repurposed as an apartment living space, and that's where Judy lives. And she's going to walk us through the building itself, tell us some stories and some of the history. I did what I could to film as much of what she was saying at the time and captured it on my camera. So I'm going to put this together in a fragmented form. But what's interesting is we also went down into the old solitary confinement space. And I took some interesting video down there. So I'm going to let you come with me down into solitary confinement today in the old Jackson prison. So come along and join me. Look at that. I know this lady. I know that lady.
When Michigan became a state, there was a battle to have the prison because it was the Industrial Revolution and there would be factories and the prisoners would have the cheap labor. So Ann Arbor and Jackson became the biggest battlers because Ann Arbor wanted the prison, but Jackson didn't want the university. They too wanted the prison. And it turned out, coincidentally or corruptly, that 3 people on the planning and deciding committee happened to be prominent Jackson members. So Jackson won the battle to have the prison. And what we are in, the entire thing, including the upper floors, there are 4 floors here, were built by the prisoners, their entire prison. There were no outside laborers. And this room became, because as the prison grew, all of the goods manufactured in the factories and the wine that was made here. Yes, there was wine. They had vineyards, and the stories of the hidden distilleries for the prisoners.
So you're not talking toilet water?
No, but I'll get to that later. And this room, of course, we didn't have glass doors here. It was this huge iron gate. Everything that you could get in or out of was an iron gate. And those doors, that wall there, that was a gate too. But it was higher. And any of the pipes that you see here And that's all part of the renovation to Armory Arts. So we have air conditioning, we have heating, etc. But this room was for the railroad. And when I came to see this place, they had just begun renovating. And this whole inside had old rusted railroad tracks. Because the railroad and the train still goes by.
I saw the tracks as you were walking over.
Yeah, and I love it because to me it's like history hasn't stopped. The train is still coming. And so the tracks came all the way in, and the train went from the street into the prison grounds, and then into here to pick things up, to collect, etc. So this room, as I say, is, it was far more rustic. Oh, and also the sandstone, and all of this was laid by the prisoners, but they had to carry it from the quarry in Spring Harbor and then come here, and the Grand River is right next, it's between this and the fairgrounds. And they had to carry all of these stones over the river and supplies, and the river has a current, and the river was cold, and they'd fall, they'd freeze, they'd be wet. So their solution wasn't to build a normal bridge, but was to get huge logs and put them across the river. But then, the stories of them, the suffering just to carry the materials, shall I say, needed to build were, it was like, my interest, what is it with the human mind that they'll do things like this? So brutal, but
It's been so much easier with the raft.
so much easier with
A raft.
a raft. And they did not, no boat, no raft, just,
They would have been able to do it quicker, more efficient.
yeah. So anyhow, and that was their toilet. And it was emptied once every 24 hours. So the night keeper, John Purvis, announced that when he would do his rounds, the stench was such that guards would literally throw up before they could walk through. It was so bad. And this is what the inmates had to breathe. And they had canaries. And the canaries would, like in the mines, when the air got too bad, and then they would open the windows or take the prisoners outside for a few moments when the canaries would keel over. But the canaries were fed wild marijuana seeds. And so when their wild marijuana seeds were put into their cages, the prisoners would say, "Tweety, sweetie, can I have some?" And that was their joy. But you'd probably like to see again, here. These doors are still, This is one studio. I'm gonna take you in there. The bolts that they left, you know, they didn't even remove. But, you know, this is the old, anything that has like the wood of this they painted, but that's the original doors. So this room is called in here. Anyway, this, I'll wait till everyone is in. Neat.
Wow.
This is the Artist Grand Gallery, but let me tell you, this was the first cell block. It had 4 stories high of 528 cells. I don't know because...
500 in this room?
No, for the whole thing.
Okay.
Each floor. But they were like back to back to back to back. And the only place the guards could walk in, there was like a walkway there near the windows. But this is the one, the guards would be up on that balcony. And this is where John Purvis, the night keeper that kept the journal, he said he'd come to do his nightly check, and the stench was unbearable.
So this wasn't open, these were cells right here where we're standing?
Yes.
Okay.
This became open when the military took over and turned this building into an armory,
Okay.
which it was until 1995.
Okay.
And that's when they decided, the whole idea of what can we do with this building and turn it into, you know, a residence. But what they did here also after it became a residence is the enterprise group of Jackson used this room for wedding. You know, they would have people come in and but the armory itself, if you look up at the ceiling, the lighting, those are wagon wheels from the Civil War.
Wow.
Really?
Really. So that unto itself is history. The heating is modern, you know, up on the ceiling. to walk down, but be very careful. Cause if you fall, I don't have the insurance.
Well, the other thing too, don't let the door shut, because it doesn't look like the knob's there.
I don't know. It's okay, it opens from the inside.
We'll all be on solitary.
Anyhow. And it's concrete, so I suggest if anyone is not stable, you hold, like me, hold on to the railing. It did not have light, we put in the light. If anyone wants, we have chairs here, you can sit, I'll tell you a bit about this. The cells, by the way, could be defined, well, we have one built here, but the remains are like between that brick wall and, you know, this, they were fed bread and water. Once a week, they were given meat and potatoes. So you can imagine they were not in very good.
I'll bet it wasn't filet mignon either, it was probably pork belly.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. And the horrible thing is that the Congress, the Michigan Congress, at one point decided to outlaw
I didn't know
capital.
was there. The light's right there. Oh, God, excuse me.
I'm sorry, they did what now?
They outlawed capital punishment. There was like a phase in Ohio and the Midwestern states and Michigan to end capital punishment. The alternative to it, and it wasn't an alternative, it was what replaced it, was life in solitary confinement.
I'd rather get.
Well, the people here that would have had capital punishment were now put down here, and it goes all the way down. So,
And you said there were no lights down here.
no, it was totally dark.
Oh, that's it. Oh crap, that's it.
smell of cigar smoke is so heavy. And he walks down to see what's going on. There were a lot of cockroaches in the building. They had gotten one of their nice big cockroaches and figured out how to measure. They got string from one of the factories and measured it so that a guy in this cell could pick up a cockroach that they would put a lit cigar butt that they had smuggled in, that somebody had dropped or from the factory, you know, whatever, and tie it onto the cockroach. The guy in the first cell would take his puff and then put the cockroach down and let the string out just far enough, the roach would go running, that he would reach the next cell, and the guy could stick his hand out, pick up the cockroach, take his puff, and then this, and so Purvis was so, as he wrote, astounded by the ingenuity when in dire circumstances, that he just watched it, and the roach, it went all the way down the one, you know, row of cells, and he decided just to leave because he could not punish such ingenuity.
I'm kind of with
So I've been long fascinated with the history of the old Jackson prison because as an author, I've been writing and researching stories from the Victorian era of true crime. And many of the cases when somebody got convicted of a crime, particularly of murder, they were sent to the Jackson prison. And in the 1800s, up until about 1870, 1880, when they went to prison for first-degree murder, it was life imprisonment in solitary confinement. And sometimes it was stipulated hard labor, so they would be taken out for hard labor, but primarily they stayed down in that space 24/7. There's no windows, there was no heat, there was no ventilation, there were insects, there were rodents, and it was dark, and they were fed on a very limited schedule, given very limited protein. I believe Judy explained in the tour that they were only given meat once a week, the rest was bread and water. So you can imagine the conditions of the men after time. Many of them died in solitary confinement. And in my research of my stories for my books, there has been many cases where they died in prison. In my upcoming book that's coming out on July 8th, 2025, there are 12 stories. Some of the cases of people that were sent to prison there, some of the men were sent into that same space, and many died right there in that space of solitary confinement that you'll find in that story. And many of the authors that were on my tour that have written stories about the Victorian era have stories from their parts of the state where the people went there and they perished in that small space of solitary confinement. So it's a very dark history, but it's a piece of history of Michigan, and I thought I would share that with you today. So I hope you enjoyed following me in this video. It was a lot of fun to take that tour with Judy and experience this with all the other authors that were part of the program. If you liked any part of this video, please be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with others. If you'd like to find out the release date or pre-order my new book, go to michaeldelaware.com and you can pre-order a copy of Murder in Victorian Western Michigan. That's coming out on July 8th, 2025. I also have my other book readily available right now, Victorian Southwest Michigan True Crime. And until next time, thanks for watching.